It's no secret that pushback nose cones are not a popular solution to try to reduce contact in kart racing. In fact, a lot of you guys had a bunch of suggestions on what you think would actually work to help curb contact. Maybe something will work, and maybe we can get rid of pushback nose cones once and for all. Let's get into it. Since we as series officials and competitors don't have control over the manufacturer of bodywork, and the people who do don't seem to really have any interest in doing anything to fix the pushback bumper system, the question is, are there any better ways to do so? Now, a bunch of you guys responded to that first video, and there were three main ideas that were thrown out there. Now, the first one was an ignition cutoff system connected to the front bumper. Now, the idea being that you make contact with the driver in front of you and your ignition cuts for a moment. Now, I think that this idea came from games where it's actually pretty effective, and you get a penalty, it's served on track, and it counts down, and then off you go. The problem is that, of course, karts don't ghost. You can't drive through a kart whose ignition is cut off. But that's not the only issue. One, you have to create a system that's going to be reliable. You have to come up with switches that are going to do this. You have to come up with a countdown system, because if it only cuts for that instant that you're making contact, well, most of the contact happens off throttle going into a corner anyway, so a momentary cutoff isn't going to hurt you unless it shuts your engine off, in which case you have a kart whose engine just shut off on the racetrack. That's problematic and probably pretty extreme in most circumstances. It also means that anytime you have an accident on the racetrack, you're going to have several karts whose engines shut off, and drivers are going to have to get out of the karts. Anything we can do as officials to reduce the reasons for drivers to get up out of their karts on an active racetrack is usually worth looking at. I do like that people are thinking, though. Another idea that was floated out there was similar to the ignition cutoff, except that it's connected to the brakes. So a driver makes contact, there's mechanical connection to the brake system, it applies the brakes. But again, we have the problem of developing a reliable system. If a driver goes in and it locks up their brakes, now we have a control issue. When it happens in an accident, again, same thing, locking up the brakes where maybe the driver doesn't want it to. What happens if the system fails and jams and you just got your brakes locked? How reliable is that system going to be? And the same problem with the ignition system, where contact happening heading into a corner. If it's just a momentary bump on the brakes when I'm on the brakes anyway, I'm going to be able to adapt pretty quickly to learn how to make contact with that braking system without losing control myself and gaining an advantage. Drivers can figure things out pretty quickly given a bit of time. Now, one idea that was brought up, I actually personally really like as an official, and also an official who works in media, is a camera system activated by contact. Now, the way it was described was that all the karts would be given 360 cameras. There would be switches on the front, rear, and side bumpers of the kart, so contact happens anywhere. It is automatically recorded based on that switch. Very similar to how camera systems in cars work these days, where you push a button, records the last 30 seconds, as well as continuing on to record as you go. That way, officials can either collect it after the race, or there's some sort of system where it gets sent up to race control directly. Now, of course, this is going to be the most complex and the most expensive system. I mean, forget all the cameras that every driver is going to have to run. Does the series provide it? Do the drivers provide it? The switches, have to make sure that they're reliable. How do you test them? How do you make sure that drivers have switches that are functioning properly? Right up to the relay system to race control, the people who have to operate it, they're going to have to review it. You're talking about a lot of money. I mean, just getting a reliable signal around a racetrack is a monumental task that's going to require a lot more work than any series I can think of is willing to put in. But again, I love that idea. And if any idea was able to be implemented without cost or complexity to worry about, that is the one I love the best. But that wasn't the most popular idea. In fact, the most popular idea is one that you hear parroted, particularly by drivers who've been racing for a long time, pre-bodywork, and that is losing bodywork entirely. Now, this seems on the surface to be a really good solution. It's not complex at all, it's not expensive, A set of sidebars and a centerpiece rear bumper is not a complex system or difficult to manufacture. But of course, will it stop contact? And the very obvious answer is no. If you watch my video, which I'll link down below, talking about what happened to Respect in racing, you already know that there was plenty of contact pre-bodywork in go-kart racing. There were a lot of broken bones back then because contact did have greater consequences when it went wrong. But there was still contact, and there was lots of it, because it seems a lot of people don't want to accept the idea that other drivers don't think they're going to get hurt any more than you do. And even when a driver does get hurt, they don't think they're going to get hurt again. I mean, everybody does the Niki Lauda math, right? What are the actual chances of getting seriously hurt? And if you've been hurt, what are the actual chances of getting seriously hurt again? Hell, I've got a spinal cord injury from a go-kart crash that happened, I think in 2000, in a basic enduro that I finished and won the race. I even continued to race after that for years. I just had a headache for 2.5 years, and it wasn't until we did some MRIs and stuff that we finally figured out why. So if the purpose of taking bodywork off karts is to try to stop them from making contact, it's not going to accomplish that. In fact, it's just going to increase the number of injuries that we have, and there's no reason that we need to go back there. Now, as much as there's a few people who think that people should be dying for their own entertainment and danger, we're nerfing the world, well, you go break stuff. You go start your own series. You can eliminate all the safety you want. Eliminate helmets, forget gloves, forget safety equipment of any kind. Just go out there and race whatever you want. But for anybody who actually wants to make a business out of this and needs insurance to do so, they're going to have to try and make things safe. And since the majority of people don't want to see their children die for a hobby, I think that you're probably on the wrong track. So I think it's fair to say that none of the suggestions are a way of actually dealing with contact in karting. In fact, the only real surefire way of trying to reduce contact in karting is through officiating. Series have to make sure that they're empowering their officials to make calls as they see them, when they see them, without exception. Rulebooks need to be closing loopholes, and people need to be trained on what the rules are and what the series expect. After all, if contact was hard enough that it should have activated a pushback bumper, it should have gotten a contact penalty regardless of whether the activation happened. So thank you all for watching. I hope you got something out of this. Like, subscribe, share, comment down below on any thoughts you have. Is there a better solution that we haven't talked about? Do you have a better idea? Let me know down below. And until next time, as always, I will see you at the track.